The first thing I noticed when I got here was how the silence felt heavy. Not the kind of quiet you get when a room is empty, but the kind that settles over every corner, thick like fog, like it's hiding something. This prison isn't just bars and walls. It's a place where secrets live in the cracks of the concrete. My name's Henry. I'm here because I made a choice that was supposed to save me, but ended up breaking everything instead. A gang gave me an order. They wanted me to kill a man. I refused. Refusal in this world is a sentence worse than the law itself. You don't get second chances when you say no to people who live outside the rules. I didn't kill the man, but the price was steep. They came after me in ways no one outside this place would believe. When the cops showed up, it was all wrapped up clean. But I knew the truth was buried deeper. I'm locked up for murder, but I didn't pull the trigger. Not really. The thing about this place is that it breathes. It moves in quiet ways. At night, when the guards are just shadows behind glass, I hear it. A strange rhythm, almost like whispering. The other guys pretend they don't notice, or they say it's just the pipes or rats, but I've learned better. Something doesn't add up. From the moment I stepped into my cell, I felt eyes on me. Not just the men, but the walls themselves. There's a pattern to it, like something watches and waits. A code in the way men pass notes, a glance held too long. The older inmates talk in riddles, hinting at things I can't quite understand yet. Then there is the matter of the man I was supposed to kill. His name was never said out loud, but everyone here knows who he is. Not just a rival gang member, but someone with his own story tangled in this place. And this strange thing disappeared shortly after I arrived. No one talks about it openly, but I can feel the tension when his name comes up, like a wound no one wants to touch. I'm not just trying to survive anymore. I'm trying to figure out what this place really is, and why it's got its claws in me. If I want to walk out of here one day, I have to understand the secret that lurks beneath the surface, or I'm as good as dead already. Days blurred into nights, and the routine of prison life carved its mark on me. Wake up, count, eat, work, sleep. But the rhythm wasn't the only thing that shaped my existence here. There were the men, the ones who decided how far I'd go or how fast I'd fall. Some wore their scars openly. Others hid them beneath quiet eyes and clenched jaws. One of the first to approach me was a guy named Eli. He was in his late 40s, with a thick beard and hands that looked like they'd seen 100 fights. He wasn't in any gang, but everyone listened when he spoke. Eli told me to watch the patterns, how the guards never noticed some things, how messages traveled in the smallest details. "You think you came here for one reason?" he asked, voice low. "This place, it's got a heartbeat of its own. Things happen that no one's supposed to see." I nodded, trying to catch the meaning behind his words. He leaned in, whispering, "You've got to learn the way things move here. Not just the men, but the walls, the silence. Something's wrong with this place, Henry. Real wrong." My mind kept drifting back to the man I never killed. People called him the Shadow, not just because he was elusive, but because his story was tangled in the prison's own dark corners. They said he vanished, but no one knew where he went or why. The mystery hung in the air, and every whispered mention tightened the knot in my stomach. Then there was an odd thing I noticed. In the old part of the prison, near the laundry room, the lights flickered just a bit too often. Not enough to be broken, but enough to make you question what was really going on. Sometimes I thought I heard muffled voices through the pipes, or footsteps where no one should be. One night, I decided to follow the sounds. I crept down the hall, careful not to draw attention. The usual clanging of metal and shouted orders faded, replaced by a strange quiet. Near the laundry, the air felt colder. I pressed my ear to the wall and caught fragments of conversation, hushed and hurried. "We don't have much time," a voice said. "If he finds out, it's all over." "Quiet," another replied. "The walls have ears." I pulled back, heart racing. Who were they talking about? Was it me, the Shadow, or something else entirely? That night, I lay awake thinking. The gang wanted me dead for not killing, but maybe the bigger threat was something deeper inside this place. Something that pulled strings no one saw. I was right in the middle of it. The days after that night felt heavier, as if the prison itself was pressing in on me. I tried to shake off the fear, but the whispering voices, the flickering lights, the sense of being watched grew stronger. Even the guards seemed tense, more guarded than usual. Eli caught me in the yard one afternoon, squinting in the harsh sunlight. "You didn't say anything about last night," he said, nodding toward the laundry building. "I heard voices," I admitted, "but I don't know who or what they were talking about." Eli's eyes darkened. "You're poking at something dangerous, not the usual gang stuff. Something underneath it all." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but a shout from across the yard broke our conversation. One of the younger inmates was in trouble, surrounded by a group that looked ready to explode. "That's your cue," Eli said quietly. "Keep your head down but watch." I did as he said, but my thoughts were tangled. Why had I been thrown into this mess? Why was the gang so quick to punish me for refusing to kill, when the prison itself seemed to have secrets that swallowed people whole? Back in my cell, I found a small piece of paper slipped under the door. No name, no signature, just a single line. "Look deeper where the shadows gather." The phrase sent a chill through me. Shadows. The same word they used for the man I never killed. Was this a warning, a clue, or a trap? The next day I made my way to the laundry room. The flickering lights were worse, casting strange shapes on the walls. I moved slowly, eyes sharp for anything unusual. Behind a pile of old crates, I spotted a loose floorboard. My heart thudded as I pried it up to reveal a small cavity beneath. Inside there was a folded envelope and a rusted key. No explanation, just those two items. I tucked them into my pocket, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down harder. Questions spun in my mind. What did the key open? Who left this for me? Was this linked to the gang, the shadow, or something else entirely? I needed answers, but I also knew that asking the wrong questions here could be deadly. Holding the envelope in my hands felt like clutching a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. I waited until nightfall, when the prison was quieter, and slipped back to my cell. The other inmates were asleep, or at least pretending to be. The silence was thick, broken only by the distant clanging of metal doors. I carefully unfolded the paper. Inside was a crudely drawn map of the prison, but not the usual layout. It showed a hidden passage, one that I had never heard of. It started near the old laundry building and snaked beneath the facility, ending somewhere close to the visitors area. The map had no labels except one word, written in shaky handwriting. The Hollow. I stared at the word. The Hollow. It sounded like something out of a ghost story, but this place was full of ghosts, both the living and the dead. Why was this map here? Wanted me to find this secret. The key was small and old-fashioned. Didn't look like it would fit any modern lock, but maybe it was for something ancient, forgotten, hidden beneath the prison's surface. For days, I kept the map and key secret. I couldn't tell Eli or anyone else. Too risky. Instead, I started watching the guards and listening closely during yard time. I paid attention to the odd moments, the flicker of a glance, a guard who seemed to hesitate near the laundry building, whispers in the dark corners. One night, I noticed a guard named Ruiz move differently than the others. He lingered near the laundry with a nervous edge. When he thought no one was watching, he slipped a small object into his pocket and walked away quickly. That was enough for me. I had to follow the map. The next day, I waited until the guards changed shifts. I slipped into the laundry room and found the loose floorboard again. Heart racing, I pulled it back and climbed into the dark hole beneath. The passage was narrow and damp, the air thick with mold and stale cold. My flashlight barely cut through the blackness. Every step echoed, the walls closing in. The deeper I went, the more I felt the weight of something watching me. Shadows moved just beyond my sight. The silence was broken by faint whispers, too low to understand but enough to make my skin crawl. I reached a heavy metal door with an ancient lock. The key fit perfectly. The door creaked open to reveal a small chamber filled with old papers, faded photographs, and a rusted metal box. The mystery was deeper than I thought. What was in this chamber? Why was it hidden? I was about to find out. Inside the chamber, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. I crouched down beside the rusted metal box. My hands trembled as I brushed away layers of grime. The lock was corroded but fragile. With a bit of pressure, it gave way. Inside were a few bundles of old letters, yellowed and brittle. I carefully unfolded one. The handwriting was hurried, almost frantic. The letters were dated years before my time here, but their words echoed through the walls of this place like a warning. They spoke of a secret network inside the prison, something hidden beneath the surface, beyond the control of guards and inmates alike. The writer mentioned the Hollow as a sanctuary for those who knew too much, a place where truths were buried, where power was traded in silence. One phrase stuck with me: they watch, but never see. Whoever wrote this knew something dangerous, something the prison's walls wanted to keep hidden. I stuffed the letters into my jacket. There was no time to think about what they meant yet. I had to get back before anyone noticed I was gone. The climb back up through the passage was harder than before. My mind raced, trying to piece together what I'd found. Who were they? What did they want to hide? As I pushed open the floorboard and slipped back into the laundry room, a sudden noise stopped me cold. Footsteps, close and fast. I ducked behind a stack of crates, heart hammering. Guard appeared, flashlight cutting through the dark. He paused, looked around, and then moved on. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Back in my cell, I hid the letters beneath the loose floorboard. I knew I couldn't trust anyone yet, but I needed help. Eli noticed my change the next morning. He asked, "You all right, Henry? You look like you saw a ghost?" I just shook my head. Something's going on in this place. Something nobody wants us to find out. He frowned. "You're always poking around. Just be careful. You're already marked enough as it is." I nodded. "Marked? Yeah. I was marked for something more than just refusing to kill." I felt the weight of eyes on me, unseen, but always present. The mystery wasn't just about survival. It was about uncovering what the Hollow really was, and what secrets this prison was built to bury. The days that followed were heavy with tension. Every glance, every whisper in the corridors seemed charged with hidden meaning. The letters haunted me. Who wrote them? What had they seen? And most importantly, what was the Hollow? I started watching the prison routines more closely. The guards moved in patterns, but there were gaps moments when no one was looking. I began to notice subtle signs, little anomalies. A scratched symbol etched faintly into a wall, a stray scrap of paper that vanished before anyone else could see it. One afternoon, while delivering laundry to the West Wing, I spotted a figure slip behind a service door I had never noticed before. The door was small and unmarked, tucked away near the maintenance corridor. Curiosity gnawed at me. Later, under the cover of night, I found myself back near that door. No guards were around. I pushed it gently, and to my surprise, it opened with a creak. Beyond was a narrow staircase descending into darkness. My heart pounded, but I stepped inside. The air was damp and cold, filled with echoes of dripping water and distant footsteps. At the bottom, I found a hallway carved into the stone, walls lined with old pipes and flickering lights. I wasn't the first to find this place. Graffiti covered the walls, messages left by inmates long gone, warnings and names crossed out in haste. And then deeper down I found a room. It was empty, save for a metal table and a single chair. The air here felt thick, oppressive. On the table lay a small notebook, its pages filled with scribbled notes and sketches. I flipped through it, realizing it belonged to someone who had been trying to map this hidden underworld. The notebook spoke of the Hollow as more than just a hiding place. It was a network of tunnels beneath the prison, used for secret meetings, smuggling, and something darker unseen forces controlling the power inside. My mind reeled. Dad, how could this be connected to the gang's order to kill? To the threats I had faced? I was drawn deeper into the mystery, but I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone I could trust. The only person I dared to talk to was Eli. Eli was a quiet man, with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. He had been in the prison longer than most, and rumors said he knew more secrets than anyone. We sat in the common area, away from prying ears, and I told him about the hidden door, the tunnels, and the notebook. He listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. "You're digging into dangerous ground, Henry," Eli said finally. "The Hollow isn't just tunnels. It's a shadow within this place. People go in and don't come out the same, or at all." I pressed him. "What do you mean, who controls it?" Eli looked around, lowered his voice. "There's a silent order. Not gangsters or guards. Something else. They use the Hollow to keep the real power here. Deals get made, debts get collected, and sometimes people disappear without a trace." I felt a chill. The gang who ordered me to kill was part of this puzzle, but I sensed it was only the surface. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "'Cause you're stubborn. You're refusing to obey the order, and that makes you dangerous. They'll want to make an example of you. But if you play it right, Maybe you can find the edge of this whole thing and slip out." We agreed to watch each other's backs. At night, I returned to the tunnels, notebook in hand, trying to piece together the scattered clues. I found strange symbols marking certain doors, coded messages hinting at meetings or warnings. Something was being planned, but I couldn't yet see what. I also began to notice changes in the prison itself, people acting nervous, guards looking away when whispers floated past them, even strange sounds from the depths below that no one dared to explain. The mystery of the Hollow was growing, and with every discovery, the danger felt closer. Thank you for watching this far. If you are enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Something was shifting in the prison. You could feel it in the silence between footsteps, in the way the guards tightened their patrols, in the tension crawling through the air like a storm waiting to break. Rumors started swirling about an inmate who had gone missing from solitary. No one saw him leave, and no one saw him again. No alarm was raised. That kind of thing didn't just happen. I spent my nights mapping out what I could of the Hollow from the notebook and from memory. I began to suspect that it wasn't just a single route, it was a system. Some parts forgotten, some used in secret, and some deliberately hidden. One evening, as I traced one of the corridors I had marked, I discovered another hidden door. This one was nearly invisible, a hatch built into the wall of a utility room that had not been used in years. The lock had been replaced, newer than the door itself. The key I found earlier didn't fit, but the lock had been tampered with recently. Someone had gone through it. I didn't have time to force it, so I memorized the location and slipped back out before anyone noticed. Back in my cell, I found another note. This time, it was hidden inside the flap of my pillow. Someone had been in my space. "Stop before you vanish too." That was all it said. Eli read it and nodded slowly. "You've been noticed." I clenched my fists. "By who?" Eli looked at me long and hard. "Not everyone wears colors. Not everyone answers to the warden or the gangs. Some answer to no one. And those are the ones you should be afraid of." The next day, a new inmate was brought into our block. Quiet, older eyes like burnt coals. Something about him set me on edge immediately. When we crossed paths, he didn't speak, but he looked at me like he knew exactly who I was and what I was doing. That night, I found the corner of my map torn off, the part that showed the hatch. Someone else was hunting the Hollow. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of metal, every murmur through the walls felt like it could be him, the man with the cold, dark eyes. I lay still, heart racing, wondering if I had already gone too far. But it was the missing corner of the map that haunted me the most. Whoever took it had a purpose. They weren't trying to stop me. They were trying to get ahead of me. The next morning, I followed the new inmate from a distance during yard time. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't glance at the guards. But he walked with intention, like he'd memorized every inch of the place long before he ever arrived. When he sat on the far side of the yard, just out of the camera's range, another inmate approached him, one of the quiet ones, the kind that stayed out of trouble, the kind you never notice until it's too late. I couldn't hear what they said, but their body language told me plenty. They knew each other. They trusted each other. And when the older one handed over something small and folded, I knew I had to find out what it was. That night, Eli and I met again in the maintenance corridor. "They're using the tunnels too," I said. "Not just the gang, something deeper. Someone who knows the Hollow like a map." Eli nodded. "There have always been people like that, not in the light. They move between walls. They trade secrets instead of favors. And if one of them is here now, you need to be even more careful." I looked at him. "Why are you still helping me?" Eli didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I was like you once. I followed the tunnels. I found things. And I lost people. If you're going to find the end of this, you better be ready for what it costs." Later that night, I returned to the hatch. The lock had been picked clean. The door was left slightly ajar. I hesitated, then climbed down. It was colder than before, and the tunnel air felt thicker. I moved slowly, carefully. After maybe 20 minutes of creeping through silence, I heard something ahead. Breathing, low and controlled. The new inmate stood in front. The new inmate stood in front of an open metal door. He held a lantern in one hand and stared directly at me. "I was wondering when you'd catch up," he said. I stood still, unsure whether to speak or run. The way he said it, calm, measured it, didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like an invitation. He He raised the lantern slightly, casting long shadows along the damp stone walls. His face was unreadable, marked by time and something colder than time. I noticed then that he was standing just beside the doorway, not in front of it. He wasn't blocking me. He was waiting. "What is this place?" I asked finally. He studied me for a long moment. "You don't even know what you're looking for yet. That's dangerous." I stepped closer. "Slowly, then tell me." He tilted his head. "Why should I?" I pulled the folded paper from my jacket, the letter I had found under the floorboard, the first clue. I held it up. "'Cause I'm already in this. Someone left this for me. Someone wanted me to find all of this." He stared at the page, then back at me. "That was never meant for you. Maybe not, but I found it anyway." He sighed, then motioned toward the room behind him. "Come inside, but don't touch anything." I followed. The room was larger than I expected, almost like an archive. Rusted file cabinets lined the walls, most of them dented or open. In the center stood a long metal table covered with folders, notes, photographs, even cassette tapes. Some of it looked recent, some of it looked decades old. He set the lantern down and watched me. "This is what's left of the old order," he said. "The real one, before the gangs took over. Before the warden even knew what he had under his feet." I picked up a photo, showed a group of inmates standing in what looked like this very room. A few were smiling. Others looked afraid. Scribbled on the back were 4 numbers. A date, 1 word. Exchange. "What is this?" He looked me in the eye. "Proof of what they do here, of what's been happening for years. The prison isn't just a prison. It's a vault. It's for secrets, for deals. And every so often, someone has to disappear to keep it sealed." Something clicked in my mind. The murders. Oh, the silence. The missing man from Solitary. My refusal to kill hadn't been about a gang vendetta. It had been about balance. Someone wanted me to kill because that death was part of something larger. I had broken the pattern, and now everything was starting to shake. I leaned over the table, scanning page after page. Some of the documents were coded. Others were reports, signed by names I did not recognize. A few had seals, government seals, prison department seals, even military ones. "This doesn't make sense," I muttered. "I keep all of this. Why not burn it?" The man gave a hollow laugh. "It's because someone always needs a record. A ledger. You think the hollow is just a myth? But it's not just tunnels. It's a system of memory, of control. It's how the prison rewrites itself without ever changing." I stared at him. "You were part of this?" He didn't deny it. "I was a cleaner. That's what they called us. When a deal went bad, when someone got too close, I was the one who made sure they vanished. Quiet. Without questions. We used these tunnels to move, to hide, to erase." A deep silence settled between us. "You ever heard of a man named Garvey?" I asked. He flinched. That was the name I heard the night I followed the voice. It was coming from that locked cell. Someone said Garvey didn't finish the job. He nodded slowly. Garvey was like me. But he broke one of the rules. He kept a record of everything he did. Everything we all did. That notebook you found was his. They buried him for that. Buried him. They say he disappeared. But no one disappears from here. Not without help. Not without purpose. I remembered the notebook. The sketches. It's the mention of an escape hatch, a route deeper than the hollow. What if he's still down there? The man raised an eyebrow. Then he's the last ghost of this place. And if you find him, you'll be the next. I turned to leave, my mind buzzing. But as I reached the hallway, he called after me. "They'll come for you soon, now that you know this much. So choose what you want more, Henry." I didn't answer. He just kept walking, deeper into the hollow, toward the route I had never taken before. If Garvey was alive, he had answers. And I was ready to listen. The map in Garvey's notebook led to a part of the prison no one spoke about. It's an old section that had been sealed off after a fire decades ago. Most inmates believed it was unstable, maybe even condemned. But from what I had seen, nothing here was truly abandoned. It was just hidden. I made my move 2 nights later. I waited until lights out, until the last round of footsteps faded down the corridor. Then I slipped through the laundry chute and into the utility shaft. From there, it was a long crawl through the vents and a drop into the basement where the sealed wing began. The air changed as soon as I passed the rusted gate. Colder, heavier, the walls were cracked with age, and soot still stained the stone in places where the fire had licked through. But the deeper I went, the clearer it became that someone had been here recently. New footprints in the dust, scraps of food, threadbare blanket hidden behind a false panel. Garvey had been here, maybe still was. I followed the narrow tunnel until I reached a room with a steel door, its lock half melted from the old fire. I pushed it open and stepped inside. He was waiting for me. An old man, barely more than skin and bones, wrapped in layers of cloth, eyes clouded but sharp underneath. He didn't flinch when he saw me, just sat there, cross-legged on the floor, a small oil lamp casting flickers of light across the room. "I knew you'd come," he said. I stared, unsure whether to speak. "You've been watching me?" I asked. "No, not watching. Waiting. Every 10 years or so, someone finds the hollow and thinks they're the first. Most turn back. But you kept going. You ignored the warnings. Why me?" Garvey gave a tired smile. "'Cause you refused to kill." He motioned to the wall. Carved there in trembling lines were names. Dozens, maybe hundreds. "These are the ones who obeyed," he said. "Every name here was part of the exchange. They did what the gangs ordered, what the real power demanded. You didn't. You broke the chain." I felt my throat tighten. And that means what? That means they don't know what to do with you. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You can expose them, but that comes with a price. Or you can disappear, like I did, live in the cracks forgotten. What you choose will decide how this place remembers you, or if it does at all. The choice was mine. For the first time since I entered that cell block, I felt it. But I wasn't ready to vanish. I was ready to burn the whole thing down. Garvey watched me with that same steady calm, but I could see something shift in his eyes when I said I wanted to bring it all down. "You think they'll let you walk into the light with the truth?" he asked. "They'll bury it in you, just like they tried with me. Then I won't walk into the light," I said. "I'll bring it to them." He studied me for a long time before standing slowly, his knees cracking under his weight. He moved to a metal box hidden beneath a pile of blankets. Inside it were old cassette tapes, documents sealed in plastic, even a few photographs. Most were yellowed, fragile. He handed me one tape. "This one is the key," he said. "Everything else is evidence, yes, but this is the confession. Not from a guard, not from a gang member, from someone higher." I turned the tape over in my hand. It was labeled in tight, faded handwriting, just a date. 12 years ago. "Who is on this?" Garvey leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly. "A man who once ran this place. Not the warden. Higher, he came here once a month, held meetings in secret with inmates selected for operations. You think all the violence here is spontaneous? You think the riots, the transfers, the murders are just survival? No, they're managed, controlled, their currency." I felt the weight of the cassette in my hand. "And this proves it." Garvey nodded. "It names names. It explains the hollow, explains the exchange. You bring this out, and you tear out the roots." I knew what that meant. It meant everyone who'd been protecting the system would come for me. It meant Eli. It meant the quiet inmates. The ones who smiled too little and watched too much. "Why didn't you use this?" I asked. "I tried. They caught me, beat me near dead, and left me here to fade out. Kept the tape because I thought one day someone might come who was still clean. Someone like you." I slipped the cassette into my coat. It was cold against my chest. I turned to leave. "I won't have another chance," he said. "I won't need one." The way back was darker than I remembered. The tunnels felt narrower, quieter. But as I emerged back into the shaft that connected to the main block, I heard a whisper echoing through the walls. They knew, but they were waiting. By the time I made it back to my cell, everything felt wrong. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you know you're already being watched. I slid the cassette under the floorboard where the notebook used to be. It wouldn't stay safe there for long, but I needed time to figure out my next step. Eli wasn't at breakfast the next morning. He was always at breakfast. I scanned the tables. The quiet ones, those men who sat alone and spoke to no one, were still in their places. But they were watching now, not just the guards. Me. Their gazes were short but sharp, like tiny blades passing over me every few minutes. I knew then that the hollow wasn't just under our feet. It had spread into the people, into the system. That afternoon, a guard stopped me outside the laundry room. Not a face I recognized. "Warden wants to see you," he said. I followed without a word. We didn't go to the administration wing. We went below it, into the medical sublevel that hadn't been used since the last riot. I knew the layout well enough by now to realize this wasn't a mistake. The guard opened a door and motioned me in. Out. Inside was not the warden, but a man in a gray suit, no tie, no name tag, leaning back in a chair like he owned the whole block. "Henry," he said, smiling like we were old friends. "Take a seat." I didn't move. He gestured again, patient. "I'd really rather you sit." Sat. "I want to talk to you about a story," he said. A rumor, really. One that's been making the rounds about a tape, about Garvey. I stayed silent. The man leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You both know you're not just poking around tunnels for fun. You found something, or someone. That's a problem. I gave nothing away. But I could feel the weight of it all pressing against my ribs. So here's what happens now," he said. "You forget the tape. You stop digging. And in 6 months, your sentence gets reviewed for early release. Clean slate. And if I don't?" The man leaned back again, still smiling. "Then we assume the worst, that you're working against the integrity of this institution, and we treat you like a threat. You already know what happens to threats in here." He stood, walked to the door, then turned back. "You're not the first, but you could be the last." Then he left me alone in the silence, with the choice curling like smoke in my lungs. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of distant footsteps. Water dripping from old pipes, the occasional metal echo of someone being moved in the dark. The man in the suit had made one mistake. He gave me a timeline, 6 months. That meant the tape scared them. They needed it buried quietly. If I waited, they'd come for me long before any deal. I knew it now. In the morning, I approached someone I hadn't spoken to in weeks. The one inmate everyone called Bones. He had once worked in the mailroom before getting stabbed during a failed drug deal. He owed me for pulling him into medical instead of leaving him bleeding out. "Can you get a tape out?" I asked, low enough no one else could hear. He frowned. Cassetta nodded. "It's gonna be expensive. I'm not paying in favors," I said. "This goes out clean anonymous. No name, no trail." Bones paused, then leaned forward. "Who's it going to?" I handed him a name scribbled on a scrap of paper. A reporter. Someone I trusted on the outside. Someone who had once written an article questioning the numbers coming out of this very prison. Bones glanced at the name, then folded the paper into his sleeve. "Give me 2 days," he said. I gave him the tape that night, wrapped in cloth, sealed in plastic. I said nothing else. For 2 days, I was a ghost in my own cell block. The guards avoided my eyes. The quiet ones stopped watching me. It was like they knew something was coming and didn't want to get caught in the storm. Then the fire alarms went off. The blare of the alarms cut through every wall like a blade. Red lights spun overhead, casting warped shadows across the block. Doors slammed. Shouts echoed down the corridor. At first I thought it was just a drill or some chaos stirred up to distract or punish. But the smoke told me otherwise. It wasn't thick, but it was real, acrid, controlled. And it wasn't coming from the kitchen. I stayed in my cell, watching, listening. Then I saw Eli. He passed my door without looking at me, slipping a folded cloth under the edge of his shirt. It was the signal we had talked about weeks ago, when escape was still just theory and rumor. The tape was out. Now came the part that would decide everything.
At lockdown.
I pretended to be asleep. When the lights dimmed and the footsteps of the last guard faded, I moved. A loose grate behind my bed led to a shaft I had only recently cleared. It led straight down through old pipes and into the buried sublevels. Not into the hollow this time, but into something older, forgotten. I crawled for an hour, every twist bringing the echo of alarms behind me fainter and fainter. Then I reached it. A chamber below the central block, stone floor. No lights, just darkness and the thrum of machinery from decades past. There were signs of old used metal chairs stacked in a corner, broken tools, even a projector mount on the wall. Someone had used this for meetings once, secret ones. I wasn't alone. A single chair was lit by a small oil lamp. And sitting in it was the man from the suit. "I told you," he said. "You could have walked out, or you'll crawl back if they let you." I didn't speak. He stood and took a slow step forward. I could still make this go away. The tape hasn't surfaced yet. I could make sure it never does. "Too late," I said. It's already gone. You're bluffing." He didn't reply, but something in his eyes shifted. A shadow moved behind him. Garvey stepped out of the dark. The man in the suit froze. "You're dead," he said. "Not yet," Garvey whispered. I don't know if what happened next was planned or instinct, but the moment hung in the air like held breath, and Garvey moved, and the man lunged forward, a knife flashing in his hand. He didn't reach me. I don't remember throwing the first punch. I just remember the feeling of him hitting the ground, his breath knocked from his lungs. Garvey kicked the knife away. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Garvey broke the silence. "It's done." Not quite, but we had turned the first lock. Garvey and I stood over the man in the suit. He was breathing, but barely. Blood ran from his mouth, and his eyes were still full of that smugness, even as his grip on power slipped away. "This place won't fall because of you," he rasped. "It's too big, too old." I crouched beside him. "Maybe not," I said. "But now someone's listening, and once they hear it, they won't stop." He tried to speak again, but Garvey kicked the lamp over. The flame died with a hiss in the dust. We left him there, not dead, but broken. Back in the shaft, Garvey looked worse than I'd seen him before. Each step seemed to cost him more. His breathing had gone shallow. "I can't go any further," he said. "You have to." "No. My part's done. You're the voice now. Get out while they're still looking the other way." I hesitated. We had come this far together. I couldn't just leave him in the dark. "I'll come back," I said. He smiled faintly. "You won't need to." I turned and crawled through the shaft alone. By the time I reached the laundry chute, the fire alarms had stopped. The chaos above was ending. I slipped back into my cell just before head count. An hour later, they found the man in the suit, injured, raving about shadows and tapes and Garvey, who had vanished again, this time for good. They locked the block down for 3 days, shook down every cell. My floorboard hiding spot was torn up, but the tape was gone, long gone. On the 4th day, I was called into the warden's office. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. "We're moving you," he said. "Why?" "Protective custody. Your name showed up in some press coverage this morning." He slid a newspaper across the table. I read the headline, "Whispers from the Hollow. Leaked tape reveals secret deals inside state prison." I met his eyes. "You don't seem surprised." He sighed and leaned back. "None of this surprises me. I just hoped it would stay buried longer." As they led me out of the room, I looked back once. He wasn't watching me. He was staring out the window into the yard, like something in him had already left. Protective custody was a strange kind of prison inside the prison. The walls were cleaner, the guards less rough, but the loneliness was suffocating. I was cut off from everyone I knew, and no Garvey, no scraps of conversation in the yard, no chance to blend into the noisy hum of the general population. At first I thought it was a relief. I could breathe without the constant weight of threats, the constant eyes watching for signs of weakness. But the silence pressed in, and the mystery I'd uncovered felt like a secret I was smothering on my own. I spent hours staring out the tiny barred window, thinking about what I had seen and heard in that tunnel. The tape, the voices, the hidden machinery behind the prison's surface. The whispers of a world within the walls, where decisions were made in shadows and power was traded like currency. One night, a guard came to my cell. Not the usual ones. This one moved quietly, his eyes sharp like he wanted to say more, but couldn't. "Henry," he said in a low voice, "you don't know what you're up against. The deeper you go, the darker it gets." I studied him. "Why are you telling me this?" He glanced around, then leaned closer. "Someone's watching you, not just the guards or the gangs. There's something else. Something older. You saw it in the tunnel, didn't you?" My pulse quickened. Was he telling the truth or trying to scare me? He shook his head and slipped away before I could ask more. That night, the mystery took a new shape. It wasn't just about the gangs or the corrupt officials. It was something buried deep in the prison itself, a secret that refused to die. I knew I had to find it, no matter the cost. The days in protective custody blurred together. I counted them in the dull echoes of footsteps outside my cell and the occasional clink of metal keys. But beneath the monotony, my mind raced with questions. What was this something older the guard hinted at? What had I really seen in that tunnel? The voices, the strange device taped under the floorboards, it wasn't just a hidden meeting spot. It was part of a bigger secret, and it felt like the prison itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to figure it out. One afternoon, the prison doctor came by for my weekly checkup. She was new, younger than most of the staff, and seemed to watch me with a strange intensity. As she took my vitals, she lowered her voice. "Henry, be careful who you trust in here. Not all danger comes from the obvious places." I nodded but kept quiet. I didn't know if she was warning me or testing me. That night, my restless thoughts led me to the small vent near my cell. I had noticed it before, but never paid much attention. Now, I pressed my ear against the metal grate. At first, nothing. Then a faint rhythmic sound, tapping, almost like Morse code. My heart pounded, someone trying to communicate. I tapped back hesitantly. "Who?" Seconds passed. Then the tapping resumed, faster this time. The code was indecipherable to me, but the message was clear. Someone was reaching out. I felt both fear and hope. This prison held more mysteries than I'd ever imagined, and now I was tangled deeper in its web. The question was, could I unravel the truth before it was too late? The tapping continued night after night, becoming my secret lifeline. I managed to learn a few patterns, enough to know someone was warning me. One message stood out. Not what it seems. I kept this to myself. Trust was a currency I couldn't afford to spend recklessly. Then came the day my chance arrived. Fight broke out nearby, chaos spilling through the block. In the confusion, a figure slipped near my cell, a man I hadn't seen before. He was lean, with eyes sharp like a hawk's. He whispered quickly, "The device under the floor is not just a bug. It controls more than voices. It controls movements." Before I could ask what he meant, guards stormed the area. The man vanished into the shadows. That night, I stared at the floorboards where I had found the device. What if the prison's strange power wasn't just physical control, but something more sinister? Messages from outside, orders sent in silence. I realized the gang's order for me to kill was just one thread. The real control was deeper, weaving through the prison's walls, invisible yet deadly. I knew I had to act, but not with violence. With careful moves, with patience. I had to expose what was truly happening here. If I did, maybe I'd finally pay the price for standing my ground, not with death, but with freedom. The next morning I stayed quiet but watched carefully. The man with the sharp eyes appeared again during yard time, moving like he belonged nowhere but everywhere. I caught his gaze for a second and nodded. That was all the invitation he needed. Later, in the shower room, he cornered me. "Henry," he said, low enough for no one else to hear, "you're playing a dangerous game. This prison runs on secrets. The device is a key part of a system. They use it to track and predict us, control us. But it's more than that." I frowned. "More how?" He leaned closer. "Ever wonder why fights break out just before transfers? Why guards change shifts at exact moments? It's all controlled. There's someone orchestrating chaos to keep the system stable. They want us to think it's random, that we're powerless." I felt a chill. "Tell me. Because you refuse to kill, it means you might be the one to stop it." His words hit me hard. I wasn't just a pawn anymore. I was part of something bigger. But stepping up meant risking everything. The mystery of the prison was no longer just a whisper in the walls. It was a challenge. After that conversation, my whole world shifted. I started noticing things I'd missed before. Small patterns in the chaos around us. Guard always standing a little too close during mealtime. Fight that broke out near the laundry right after a suspicious phone call. The way some prisoners moved like they were on a schedule, not by chance. That night in the cell, I couldn't sleep. The quiet felt heavy, like the walls were closing in, pressing secrets into my skin. I thought about the man's warning. Was I really the one who could unravel this? Was I even ready to face what was behind all this control? The next day, I began trying to connect with others who seemed uneasy. Some were hesitant, afraid to speak. Others, like me, had their own stories of strange things happening. Together, we started piecing together the bigger picture, a network within the prison designed to break spirits, to keep us trapped not just behind bars, but inside a system that controlled our every move. One afternoon, as I walked back from the yard, I felt eyes on me. I turned and caught the gaze of another inmate, someone I hadn't noticed before.
I nodded subtly, like he wanted to share something but was scared.
I approached him. "You know what's going on here, don't you?" He glanced around nervously. "More than you think. Talking about it isn't safe." My heart pounded. I was deeper than ever, and there was no turning back. He led me to a quiet corner of the yard where the noise faded into a distant hum. His name was Luis, and he had been here longer than most. "The prison isn't just about keeping us inside," he said quietly. "It's about controlling us. Minds, bodies, even our hopes. There's a system beneath the surface, run by some inmates, with silent approval from certain guards. They call it the Order." I swallowed hard. Order sounded like the ghost everyone feared, but few dared mention. "What do they do?" Luce's eyes darkened. "They pick who rises and who falls. You don't play their game, you get punished. Sometimes worse than what the prison sentences say." The sudden cold shoulders, the threats, the beatings that seemed almost ritualistic. And maybe even the strange disappearances I'd heard whispers about but never saw confirmed. I asked, "Why tell me this?" He hesitated. "Because you didn't take the order to kill. That means something. You're not like the others." His words hit me. Refusing to kill had painted a target on my back, but maybe it had also marked me as someone the Order couldn't ignore. They either wanted me to join or break. Luis handed me a folded scrap of paper with a meeting place and time. "If you want to know the truth, come here at midnight. But be careful. If they catch you, you won't get a second chance." My mind raced. Was I ready to walk into the lion's den? Could I really take on something that felt bigger than just me? Midnight came fast. The yard was nearly empty, except for a few shadowy figures slipping through the darkness. I moved cautiously, clutching the note Luis had given me. The meeting place was near the old laundry building, a place everyone avoided after dark. When I arrived, Luis was already there, waiting. Behind him stood two other men, faces hard and unreadable. No greetings, just a quick nod. Luis wasted no time. "The Order runs this prison like a shadow government. They control the drugs, the fights, the favors. They even decide who gets protection. They don't want people like you getting in their way." One of the men stepped forward. "We heard you refused the hit. That's brave or maybe foolish. Either way, you're a problem." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I don't want trouble. Just want to survive and get out." Luis shook his head. "It's not that simple. They don't just let people walk away. If you want out, you need to understand how deep this goes." Suddenly, footsteps echoed nearby. Everyone tensed. I caught a glimpse of a guard's flashlight sweeping the yard. "You've got 5 minutes to decide," Luis whispered. "Join us or disappear." I looked at the faces around me, knowing whatever choice I made now would change everything. I took a breath, feeling the weight of every second ticking by. The men waited silently, eyes locked on me like judges deciding my fate. Luce's words echoed in my mind. Survive or disappear. The choice was brutal but clear. "I'm not joining any gang," I said finally, voice steady. "I'm here to finish my time and get out clean." Luce's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "You're brave, Henry, or maybe just stubborn." A sudden noise cut through the tension, a muffled shout from inside the prison walls. The other two men flinched. Luis looked toward the noise, then back at me. "They're moving something hidden." That was the mystery I'd been chasing all along. It's not just who ruled the prison, but what secret they buried beneath these walls. "Help me find out what it is," Luis said quietly. "We'll expose them both. You refuse to kill. I refuse to lose more men to silence. Together, maybe we have a chance." I glanced around, feeling the burden of my choice, but also a flicker of hope. This was the fight that mattered. Not for power or survival alone, but for truth. And maybe for redemption. Luis led me through narrow corridors, past guards distracted by routine, down to the old maintenance tunnels. The air was thick with damp and secrecy. I remembered the strange noises I'd heard over weeks, clanks, whispers, muffled cries. Now it was time to see what they meant. As we moved deeper, Luis whispered, This place holds more than pipes and wires. ... It hides what no one wants known. I kept my breath slow, muscles tight. The path ended at a heavy metal door, rusted but solid. Luis pulled a set of keys from his pocket, unlocking it with a practiced hand. Inside was a small, dim room stacked with crates. I scanned quickly, nothing out of place. But then I spotted a faint glow from behind a pile of crates. Pushing them aside revealed a hatch leading down even further. Luis handed me a flashlight, ready for the real secret. I swallowed. The answer was buried beneath the prison's surface, waiting to be uncovered. We climbed down into the darkness. The tunnel beneath was narrow and cold. My flashlight barely cut through the thick blackness. Luis moved ahead like he had been there before, but I felt every step as if I was walking into a trap. "This is where they keep the unspoken," Luis said quietly. "Prison's darkest secrets, not just who runs it, but what they hide." I swallowed hard, thinking about my own ordeal. How refusing that hit had put me in this nightmare. What could be worse than being trapped with killers and thieves? Whatever was down here, it promised to be worse. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. Flickering fluorescent lights barely lit up rows of metal cages, each one holding something or someone. My heart slammed in my chest. These were not prisoners from the main blocks. These cages were smaller, locked tighter. Suddenly, a soft, raspy voice called from one of the cages. "Henry." I froze. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Luis motioned for silence. "We're not supposed to be here. No one talks about these cells." I stepped closer to a cage. Inside, a man with sunken eyes stared back at me. He looked older than anyone I'd seen, gaunt, like he'd been here for years. "Why is he here?" I asked Luis. "They say he's a ghost story. Someone who saw too much." I looked into the man's eyes and felt a chill. Mystery wasn't just about who ran the prison or why I was here. It was about the things we were all hiding beneath the surface, secrets no one dared speak. And I knew then that staying silent would only bury me deeper. The man's eyes held a strange mixture of pain and clarity. I leaned closer, whispering, "Who are you?" He barely moved his cracked lips. "They call me Parker. I've been here long enough to forget what freedom feels like." Luis glanced around nervously. "We shouldn't stay. If the guards find us, it's worse than what you're already paying for." But I couldn't turn away. "What do you mean? What do you know?" Parker's voice dropped even lower. "The real prison isn't these walls. It's the silence inside every cell. The lies we tell ourselves just to survive." I looked back at the metal bars, the cold floor, the hollow faces in the darkness. Was it true? Was I really trapped not just by the bars, but by the fear, the guilt, the choices I'd made? Luis pulled me back gently. "We need to get out before someone hears." As we moved back into the tunnel, my mind churned. The gang's order, my refusal, the price I'd paid, wasn't just a story about survival. It was about what happens when you refuse to kill, refuse to lose your soul. And the prison, with all its cruelty, was a mirror. It reflected not just what was outside, but what was inside each of us. The mystery that haunted me wasn't just in the shadows of these walls. It was in the question I had to answer for myself. Could I stay true to who I was without being destroyed? And as I walked back to my cell, the quiet in the prison felt less like emptiness and more like a challenge. I wasn't just a prisoner of this place. I was a prisoner of my own choice. But I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. That night, as the lights dimmed and the prison fell into its usual restless silence, I lay on my cot staring at the cracked ceiling. The weight of everything pressed down: the gang's order, the price I paid, Parker's words echoing in my mind. I was caught between fear and hope, trapped by walls and by decisions. In the days that followed, I started talking to more men. Not about gangs or fights, but about the things that really mattered. The regrets, the dreams, the parts of themselves they thought were long gone. Slowly I saw something changing. Small acts of kindness, quiet defiance, moments of honesty in a place designed to crush it. Luis stayed by my side. "You're different," he said one afternoon. "Most guys would have broken by now." "Maybe," I answered, "but maybe breaking isn't the only way to survive." One evening, I found Parker sitting alone in the yard. I approached carefully. "You were right," I said. "The real prison isn't just these walls." He looked at me, a faint smile breaking through the weariness. then what is it? It's losing yourself to fear, but it doesn't have to be that way. I'm done letting them decide who I am. He nodded slowly. Good, that's a start. Months passed. I sat and still stood, but inside me something shifted. The mystery of the prison was not in some secret or shadowy figure. It was in how men chose to live behind the bars. In courage. In the decision to keep fighting even when the world wanted you to give up. I never killed for the gang. I paid the price for that choice, but I never lost myself. And that, maybe, was the real freedom.